It's getting closer to the NFL season, and we are bringing you guys quarterback rankings for the 2023 fantasy football season. Do us a favor. Go ahead and drop a like to show some love. Subscribe if you like fantasy football. We got a bunch of ranking videos on the page. I want you to comment down below right now who's going to be the breakout quarterback of 2023. Just before we get into it, if you guys want rankings for all of your redraft, best ball, dynasty leagues this entire season, use our code LAND, L-A-N-D, at flockfantasy.com/land. That's going to get you 30% off your membership. Okay, so let's start in the sixth tier. We're doing 6 tiers here.
6 tiers. Oh boy.
And I think it's important to note that for Superflex purposes, the guys in tier 6 and tier 5 are important. For one quarterback, I would say probably tier 4 and above is what you're really looking at. But just for those guys in Superflex, I think it would be important just to stretch it out here. We're giving you almost our top 28 right now at this very moment. And as we always say, it is fluid. It will change. I promise you this will change. It's just
100%.
As we currently stand here in early June, this is where it stands. So in tier 6, Badake, I have 5 quarterbacks.
Okay. I'm interested. And I'll just as well.
Okay, perfect. I mean, let's hope that they're the same quarterbacks.
Well, I think
this is where I would have CJ Stroud.
I have 5.
I have lower expectations for CJ Stroud. I think we should have lower expectations for rookie quarterbacks as a whole. But this is where I would have CJ Stroud. Not a lot of standout receiving options for him either. No. Love him as a prospect, but as a rookie, we should have very low expectations for him in fantasy. I also have Desmond Ridder here. Desmond Ridder coming into his second year. You could make an easy argument that he could be a sneaky buy.
Come on, baby.
You know, a little bit of the legs we've seen before, so there's a little bit of rushing upside. You got Kyle Pitts, you got Drake London, you got Bijan Robinson. So, don't sleep on Desmond this year. Also, don't sleep on Sam Howell. I have Sam Howell here in this 6th tier. The only start that he had all last offseason, he was very, very good. He played the Dallas Cowboys. And, guys, the Cowboys weren't resting players. They were full on with their defense. Everyone was starting.
Full on that last game, that's right.
And he had 19.3 points in that game. That's a higher, he's not going to average that every game, but per game, that one game sample size, that's more than Daniel Jones, Tua, Geno Smith, Kyler Murray last year. So I don't have expectations for him to average 19 points per game. But what I'm saying is the optics are good, right? If anyone watches Succession, the optics are good. You've got Jahan Dotson, Terry McLaurin, Antonio Gibson. And I'll just run through the rest of this tier and then we can see if we agree or disagree on anything. I also have Jordan Love in this tier 6. Okay. Good weapons around him. You've got Christian Watson there. But outside of Christian Watson, I mean, Romeo Doubs has been okay. There's not a ton of solid receiving threats who are established at this very point. I think Jaden Reed can be a good receiver. We don't know that yet. I think Luke Musgrave can be a good receiving tight end. We don't know that yet. And typically we don't see that out of rookie tight ends. And then the other person I would have in this tier would be Bryce Young. I think you can make a case for Bryce Young being in a tier above this because I just think he's going to be more ready, and the Panthers as a whole have done more to make him comfortable to start his NFL career. But again, I think we should in general have lower expectations for rookie quarterbacks. So that's what my tier 6 looks like. You got any differences that you want to talk through?
I actually have all similar players, just all jumbled up. One person I do have on the edge, actually, I have not one similar player. There is one player I have in this tier that we might disagree on, and maybe you don't even have him in your top 20, 24-ish, and that is Trey Lance. So I don't have Sam Howell there, and I'm once again projecting, right?
Okay.
If Trey Lance does get the start, and maybe you have him higher, if Trey Lance does get the start, I am drafting him over Sam Howell, right? I think we would all do that, and Sam Howell, I can see in a 12-man league, super flex. I can see him still going undrafted, and a lot of people taking him over Trey. And I think that's where I'm at.
I don't think he'll go undrafted in super flex.
Maybe not.
I don't think so.
I think I would rather go Trey in this route. But everyone else I like Desmond. Desmond's my last guy on this list.
Sure.
So I don't know if you have him higher.
I do have Trey Lance higher. Okay. Absolutely have him ranked. You guys know I love Trey Lance. It did not work out last year, but I have him higher. Why don't we leave him as a conversation for tier 5, and I'll just
sure.
explain, and then we'll talk through it. And then you let me know if you think he should be in tier 5 or not.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, so we're relatively on the same page there. A lot of really tier 6. I'm looking at like a ton of unproven guys and more difficult pathway to success given the team around them and just being unproven, right? I mean, all these teams, there's a lot of question marks. Okay, here in tier 5, this is where I would have Kenny Pickett, or that's Justin Herbert.
Come on, Kenny.
But this is where I would have Kenny Pickett.
Okay.
You have him in this 5th tier?
I do have him in this 5th tier.
This is where I would have Kyler Murray. And again, keep in mind, I'm only saying from a super flex league. In one quarterback leagues, there's really no reason to draft Kyler Murray because he's just going to be sitting on your bench for maybe 6 weeks or so while you're trying to navigate the waiver wire. Yeah. But in Superflex, he's absolutely worth rostering because having him for your playoff stretch, if he plays, that could be the difference between you winning a championship.
No doubt about it. And, once again, like we said, it's fluid. So if the reports come in, sooner rather than later saying that he's going to be ready for week 1, we'll have a different conversation and you can probably see that a little bit later. But for now, 100%. He is in my tier 5 as well.
This is where I would have Derek Carr. Not sexy whatsoever, but he's a starting quarterback, and he's been like this middle of the pack fantasy guy for a while. So
he did all right last year. Wasn't terrible.
Got to show him a little bit of respect, even though we don't want to. This is where I have Matthew Stafford as well. All last offseason, had that massive injury to his elbow. Now he's healthy. If you have Cooper Kupp ranked in your top 5, you better have Matthew Stafford ranked at least in your top 24. He's my quarterback 20 at this very moment. Do you have him in this tier 5?
Yes, I do have him in this tier 5.
And then the last 2 players, one would be Trey Lance. Okay. The other would be Anthony Richardson.
Yep, there we go. So we're actually on par essentially throughout the whole way outside of Trey Lance. Yeah, completely agree. I mean, Anthony Richardson, the legs. The upside with the legs. We've seen the upside, with Justin Fields. We've seen mobile guys, dual quarterback. Now, is he going to be phenomenal on the ground? I mean, in the air, probably not, but goal line opportunities, him getting, rushing for 150 yards, but only having 12 completions, but still putting up 20 fantasy, 30 fantasy points. That could be Anthony Richardson this year. And I would say confidently that we both believe he probably will be the starter week 1 as well. Unless anything else changes as we get closer to the season.
Yeah, if anyone out there is like, I remember someone commented on one of our videos recently, and they were like, you really think Anthony Richardson's going to play this year at all? There's no way. And I'm like, he's going to play. Do you really think they just spent a top 5 pick on Anthony Richardson? And it's not like Jimmy G's waiting, and they're a Super Bowl team. You got Gardner Minshew waiting, and this team was really bad last year. Yeah, he's going to take his strides. He's going to grow. He's going to progress. It might not be exactly on week 1, but I would bet all the money I have in the world by week 5 or 6 that he's a starter. But you're right. It's the Justin Fields case here. It's going to be ugly in the air, but it's going to get you a lot of fantasy points on the ground. If he starts all 17 games, I think he probably rushes for 1,000 yards. And this is why I think Trey Lance should be ranked right beside Anthony Richardson. We don't know if Anthony Richardson's starting week 1. The vibes are good right now. We don't know if Trey Lance is starting week 1. The vibes are getting good. Each week, the vibes are getting better. And I would say if Trey Lance is named the starter, I would have him even higher than this. But based off of the vibe check right now, if Trey Lance starts, he has that rushing upside. But guess what? He also has incredible offense all around him. George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, one of the best offensive lines in the NFC, and the head coach of Kyle Shanahan. So, look, if Trey Lance starts, I think he's probably going to end up being in my top 12 rankings. But right now, based off the vibe check, I think he's more than worthy of being right next to Anthony Richardson. Okay. If both of these guys are named the starter week 1 and they play 17 games, who would you rather have? I'd rather have Trey Lance in that offense.
Yeah.
But it's close.
It is difficult. And I think, it is. I would rather have Trey Lance. And maybe that's you convincing me to have him in the tier 5 because I did have him in tier 6, which makes sense. But at the same time, I mean, it's tough. It's a tough one. I think,
like we said, this is fluid. Trey Lance is one of those names. Anthony Richardson is one of those names. Like, it's going to change. But right now, given the current situation, I don't think Trey Lance should be worlds apart from Anthony Richardson. because we don't know if either of them are going to start. We think they both will, and if they do, then give me Trey Lance, you know?
Yeah.
But again, it's fluid. It will change. And I don't think we expect either Anthony Richardson or Trey Lance to give you a bajillion points through the air. It's the rushing upside. And for Trey Lance, it's the offense around him. He just has to dump the ball off. And CMC can take it for a touchdown. Debo can take it for a touchdown. Kittle can take it for a touchdown.
For sure.
Okay, so here in tier 4, we're moving more towards those quarterbacks in a one quarterback format that, you know, these might be considered like your late round quarterbacks. If you're like me and you wait on quarterbacks to like one of your last couple picks, these are some of the really good options probably. Russell Wilson, let's see if he can revive his career.
Big ol' Russell.
With Sean Payton in town. You got Dulcich, you got Judy, you got Marvin Mims. Let's see what happens there. Jared Goff, I mean, you can make a case I'm too low on Jared Goff. I have him in this tier 4. I think that offense only got better when you add Jahmyr Gibbs. Kirk Cousins, you know, always this middle of the pack, just mid quarterback who's going to get you top 12 to 15 finish, but you add Jordan Addison. I think that offense was already top 3 in pass attempts per game. Now you add a weapon like Addison. I don't think that's going to change. I got Geno Smith here, who is my favorite late round quarterback in redraft leagues this year, or if you're playing best ball or whatever the case may be. If you can stack, let's say, a JSN or a Lockett with Geno Smith, it feels really, really good in drafts. Geno Smith, the quarterback 5 in fantasy last year, I believe 8 in points per game. Now you add my wide receiver 1 in Jackson Smith and Jigba, and a good receiving running back in Zach Charbonnet.
Yeah.
Geno Smith, I think, is one of the best late round quarterbacks. I will put Aaron Rodgers ahead of him just out of respect for the 2-time, back-to-back MVP, rather.
Yeah, MVP, yeah.
And then I have Tua at the beginning of this tier. So these are all quarterbacks that I look at, and I think any single one of these players, they could finish top 12 this year.
Yeah.
Any single one of those quarterbacks could finish top 12, and they're all quarterbacks that I will target instead of spending a second-round pick on Patrick Mahomes, right? A second-round pick on Josh Allen. I'll build the rest of my team out and then look at these quarterbacks as options.
Okay. I think we're on the same page. The only one you haven't mentioned, which I'm assuming you have in tier 3, which is kudos to you. I mean, that's Daniel Jones.
I do have Daniel Jones in tier 3.
And that's probably with the rushing upside, you know, the opportunity of, you know, Darren Waller to be there as well. This offense is improving the offensive line, the offensive weapons outside just Darren Waller, really Saquon Barkley, but also rushing for over 700 yards this past year. Maybe he does the same thing again this year. So I can see the case in tier 3.
Yeah, with Geno Smith, right? With Daniel Jones, it looks like the past 2 videos that we've recorded, I'm higher on this Giants offense than you are.
Slightly higher, yeah, and I think maybe that is my heartbreak every single year. It's like, is this year for DJ? Is this year for DJ?
Sure.
So I'm
Daniel Jones
regression.
last year was better than people give him credit for. I mean, without really
awesome.
any receiving threat whatsoever to mention. He threw 15 touchdowns, not crazy, but he only threw 5 picks. He was a much better quarterback than people want to give him credit for. Over 67% of his passes completed. No real alpha at all. Now you add Darren Waller. If Waller can stay healthy, I know that's a big question. But look, Daniel Jones finishes as the quarterback 9 last year without Darren Waller. Now you add Darren Waller. What could he do with him? And you're right. What Daniel Jones does on the ground is always overlooked. Over 700 receiving yards, but more importantly, 7 rushing touchdowns. That's why I have Daniel Jones here in this tier 3.
You don't gotta convince me. I don't want my heart to be broken again.
Yeah,
but I can see the opportunity. I see the pathway, and I believe in this offense. I'm just skeptical.
You're scared. Yeah, I mean you've been hurt before, and you don't want to be hurt again. I get it.
Exactly.
Also in this tier 3, I have Dak Prescott. Who had a pretty, I would say, career worst year last year. He did have an injury to his hand, but I think he should be back on track. That offense is going to score a lot of points. Deshaun Watson, who, keep in mind the context is so important with him. Every year he's been a full-time starter. He's finished top 5, but last year didn't really get to be with the team, thrown in towards the end of the season, different offense. It's going to be different this year. And he has proven to be a good quarterback for fantasy purposes.
Yeah.
And then I would also have Trevor Lawrence here in this tier 3, who I'm projecting to take the next step, but all the guys in tier 2, I know that they're not going to let me down based off of what it would take ADP wise. So that's what my tier 3 looks like right there.
That's what your tier 3 looks like. Okay, so I guess the only difference I do have Trevor Lawrence in tier 2. I actually only have 2 quarterbacks in this tier, and that's Deshaun Watson and Dak Prescott. They're kind of in that weird place where we've seen, the top 5 production. But I guess we need to see it again. Dak Prescott in his hand. Deshaun Watson hasn't played for a full year.
Sure.
But I do see Trevor Lawrence in a higher tier. But I'm happy to keep him here, obviously, for time's sake. And
well, why don't we meet in the middle? I'd be happy to pop him into tier 2.
And then Daniel Jones for in tier 3.
Your giant in tier 3, and I have no problem with Trevor being in tier 2. Honestly, I probably should have him in tier 2, but yeah, I'm still I'm still.
You did great.
I
last
guess
year.
again, the way my tiers work is would I draft Trevor over the guys in tier 2? For me, it's a no. And that's why I had him there. But let's just talk about that tier 2 then.
Yeah.
I would have Justin Herbert. Again, I would be more comfortable with Herbert than Trevor Lawrence for fantasy this year. Justin Fields, the rushing upside. Now you add DJ Moore. Don't need him to be a superstar in the air. Just need him to be a superstar on the ground, which he's shown he can do. I got Lamar Jackson here. And then I've got Joe Burrow. So if you just hear where I'm coming from here, if those 4 quarterbacks are on the board, Burrow, Jackson, Fields, Herbert, I would take all of them over Trevor Lawrence, whereas I wouldn't be willing to take those quarterbacks. I wouldn't be willing to take Trevor Lawrence where I need to take those quarterbacks.
Where you need to take him.
So,
which makes sense. And, I think Trevor Lawrence, that is the last quarterback there for me that I believe could be like the difference maker for my team. Maybe hypothetically, we're thinking of super flex or one quarterback that could be, I guess super flex, that could be a CD, right? At the end,
sure.
Or that could be a Bijan, depending on where you're at, or whatever the case may be. And then in a one quarterback, that can be Trevor Lawrence,
6th round,
or Brandon Ayuk, hypothetically, or whatever the case may be. And I think I'd rather lean on Trevor Lawrence a little bit more there, and then maybe take a chance on somebody else later.
I hear you. Yeah. Like in that scenario, I'd rather grab my wide receiver 2 or 3 and then try and get a Geno Smith later, try and get a Jared Goff later.
Sure.
Whereas if Fields was on the board or Lamar was on the board, it's like, okay, no brainer. Like let's not overthink this. And I'm not anti Trevor Lawrence. I just think in redraft, I feel like I project a little bit less, and I think I try and switch off my dynasty brain. Only think about this year. Yeah. What could go wrong? But yeah, I'm happy to put him in tier 2. Do you have anyone else in this tier 2?
No.
Yeah. Lamar Jackson, my quarterback 5. Burrow, my quarterback 4. I have a feeling I could.
That's exactly where I was going. Oh, you can swap it. Okay, I was going to say I have a feeling where I can put Joe Burrow into tier 1 with the rest of these guys. Okay. QB4 this past year, phenomenal year, and I think it can just take the next step even further this year. And I'm not really sure what happened with this offense where it kind of fell off. I think Jamar Chase missed a couple games, right? They needed to get a little bit more depth. I think Jamar Chase and T missed time at the same time, which really hurt Joe Burrow. But
they missed time. I don't know if it was the same time, but they did miss time.
They did miss time. So I wonder if that was a full 17 slate games right there where Joe's going to finish. But I think that's where I was going. The argument that he could be in tier 1 could be there for some people, and I think he's been he was a top 4, top 5 quarterback the past 2 years.
I hear you out there. Here's what I'll say. The guys in my tier 1, all these guys have scored over 24 points per game last year, right? That is Jalen Hurts. That is Josh Allen. That is Patrick Mahomes, right? No need to really reinvent the wheel with those 3 guys. All these guys scored over 24 points per game in fantasy last year. While Joe Burrow was good, he didn't meet that sort of climax, if you will. Like he was at 21.7. Right. So to me, he's closer to what Fields and Lamar will give you than he is what a Jalen Hurts or Allen or Mahomes will give you.
Sure.
I agree the weapons around him are fantastic. But if I'm looking at the board, I'd rather have those tier 1 guys over Joe Burrow, and I wouldn't draft Joe Burrow what it would take to get those tier 1 guys. So,
Makes sense.
so yeah, I hear where you're coming from. I mean, don't sleep on Lamar though. If Lamar can stay healthy and he's got all these receiving options, I mean, he could be on for another quarterback 1 finish. Don't sleep on Lamar.
100%. I think that's what we keep forgetting, that Lamar has the rushing upside. So another guy we can see in that top tier 1 with a rushing upside. And this offense only gets better. OBJ, Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, if he can stay healthy. Mark Andrews, J.K. Dobbins is also back as well. So I can see the conversation for all those guys, honestly.
Yep. So anything here that you wanted to discuss before we end the video?
No,
anything
I think
that
I feel
don't feel good about, or
I feel pretty confident about everything. One difference I do have is I have Jared Goff over Kirk Cousins. I also have Russell Wilson. I have Russell Wilson over Geno Smith. So just little fixes, little changes. Russell Wilson has been a top 10 quarterback in the history of his career, essentially, outside of, I think, the past 2 years, and one other year in the middle there randomly. But with Sean Payton coming back, I think he can definitely come back to that form. Other than that, it's just the little nicks and changes. I have Kenny Pickett over Kyler Murray, Derek Carr, and I think I might be putting him over Matthew Stafford as the season comes along, gets closer, without a doubt. So once again, just those little changes in my rankings. But other than that, I think we are pretty set.
Yeah, I definitely think you can make a case for Pickett over Carr or Goff over Cousins. With Geno and Russ, I'm gonna be pretty bullish on Geno this year. I mean, you know what's funny, Badake, is I was researching for a video, and this just comes to mind because we're talking about it. You know how the entire Team 3 were campaigning for let Russ cook, let him throw the ball more? This is how petty Pete Carroll is. Last year, Geno Smith threw the ball, I think, 570 plus times. Russell Wilson, in his 10-year Seattle career, never threw the ball that much in a single year, ever. Ever. That's how petty Pete Carroll is.
I think that was the argument, though, right? Like, I mean, they were so fixated on running the ball, where you had one of the best quarterbacks to throw the ball at the time in his peak, not throwing the ball. And it was like, okay, you got a 3rd and 3 and 5. We're going to run it with Marshawn. I get it. Marshawn's great, but like Russ can get the first as well,
Yeah. No, it's so Geno Smith over 570 pass attempts last year. Russell Wilson in his 10-year career is averaging almost 100 less than that per year.
Wow.
So that's how petty Pete Carroll is. He was like, you wanted to cook, you didn't have the right mindset. Geno's gonna cook. Look, that offense was really, really good. You add Jackson Smith and Jigba. I mean, I think Geno Smith, the disrespect is too much right now in the community as a whole. One of my favorite buys in Dynasty, and I think he's going to smash again this year. But again, I'm not saying like he's worlds apart from Russ, but the vibe check in general around Russell Wilson definitely has its own question marks. I think Sean Payton will help him recover. But I just thought that was funny when I was researching. Like, that's how petty Pete Carroll is.
Definitely argument for both of those guys. Love Russ, love Geno. I think with Sean, like you said, Sean Payton, I think that's the biggest X factor there, without a doubt. We've seen success with, I guess, a quarterback and with that caliber like Russell Wilson, that kind of build as well, with mobility that Sean Payton has produced. So I'm excited to see what both those guys can do this year.
Yes, I agree. All right, guys, do us a favor, drop a like on the video, subscribe if you like fantasy football, and we will see you guys in the next one. All love. Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, LAND, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.
It's so easy, even your grandma could scan that QR code right there.